you said it well earlier because you teach this.
Right. So I think it allows for folks to feel welcome in certain spaces and affirmed, because we have, people in our community who have never been seen or never been heard. And so immediately when you not only remember their name, but you also remember how to refer to them in their absence, it makes a huge impact on their life. You might be the only person who outside of their, circle who will recognize and honor a pronoun. And they're just like a name. If you don't know somebody's pronoun, you use their name. It's almost the equivalent.
Yeah.
And so being respectful of that and understanding that when you, announce yourself, you introduce yourself with your pronouns, what you do is you give people the space and opportunity to do the same. And you're also just modeling really good behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, polite just to be respectful, right? But I think, I hear the naysayers all the time because I, frequent spaces where people are just angry and bitter and why are you making me call you that, right? You can identify with however you want, right? You've heard these arguments before, right?
Absolutely.
But why are you making me call you what you want? I see you as I want to see you. I mean, it's just like this twisted, weird argument to justify like just stubbornness. I don't know how to put it.
No, yeah, it's exactly
I think we can ask them the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you wanting me to fit in to your narrow definitions,
Yeah.
right? I mean, let's go back to it's really beautiful how I think young people now are being really fluid, right, with their sexuality. And you don't have to be butch or femme, right? You got options, right? But really, it's not new. We're going back to what it was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, we're going back to what it was. I remember reading, I don't know the statistics, right, but the diversity in nature,
Wow.
right? All that is nature, animals, plants, human beings, right? To think that there's only
a dichotomy.
yeah. So we can ask them the very same thing, right? Why do I have to stick to your black and white just because you ain't having fun?
Exactly. Don't take
That's true.
don't project on me.
I know,
Yeah.
because I be having myself a good time.
Yeah, and y'all are like vibrant people, right? And I think that comes from, like a space of being comfortable with who you are, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, y'all shine. I've seen y'all in y'all's elements, wherever y'all go, y'all are always shining, having a good time, and that says something.
And I think we talked about it, right? A little bit about how it took a lot of work, right? For I am midlife, right? And in my midlife crisis, right? Or coming to who I am in my midlife, I think my best joy, right? I didn't go out and buy a Corvette. I'm all about I want pecs, right? And being who I am and being very comfortable in being masculine and feminine in a very gay man kind of way. And the body that I'm building right now, right? Because I lift weights every day and I really want to have this masculine body. And you know what that is doing is that is healing that little girl.
Right.
Wow.
That I remember that little girl when she was 5 or 6 and all she ever wanted to do was be like her father. Right? And I was told over and over and over again that I couldn't, that I shouldn't, and I wasn't allowed. I wasn't given freedom like you, right? And so having to suppress that for so long, and now, I get to be who I am, and I get to tell that little girl, right? Girl, you rock suits now.
Yeah.
So that's the work I think that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and that is beautiful in itself, right? To be able to speak about that, to reclaim that, to be able to walk into that. You mentioned earlier that beauty was sort of shaped and viewed in the lens of just what was feminine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I had a totally different experience. I always call my mom an accidental feminist. She had no idea what she was teaching me growing up. We were very independent women, and I say that in quotes, because my mom was a single parent and we had a co-parent. So it was easy for her to show me both sides, right? This is how we do things this way. This is how we do things the other way. But it allowed me the freedom to basically wear whatever I wanted, to just kind of be who I wanted to be. We played sports. We were always outside. She never expected me to play with dolls and curl my hair. Like, it was never going to happen. And so we just kind of evolved from that. But I also spent a lot of my time presenting as femme. And I would wear makeup, and I had curly long hair, and my mom would always beg me to put on a dress or a skirt or like a low-cut blouse. And I'm years old. And when I turned I chopped all of my curly hair off. And to this day, my mom is in mourning because she'll look at me and be like, "Oh, Mija, I miss your beautiful curly hair. You were so beautiful." And so it just, for me, it's like, is beauty only femininity?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, because as we mentioned earlier, there's beauty in everything. And there are masculine folks who are very beautiful. I mean, look at Ruby Rose. I couldn't think of her name earlier, but I'm like, yeah. I mean, that's beautiful, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're hyper feminine or you're presenting yourself in a certain way and you have a low cut blouse, or, you know, like it didn't make sense to me. And so when I think about it, I'm like, wow, we could be masculine and still be beautiful. We don't have to be masculine and handsome, although sometimes I'm like, look at that handsome butch there, you know?
You walk past the mirror, like, yeah.
Hey, yeah. I don't know. Do you ever get beard envy as a masculine of center person? Do you ever get beard envy?
I do,
point.
and you know
That's a good
why? I think I get the envy because have you ever seen the pictures of like before or after a great beard on a guy? Like, it really changes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I feel like you can play with your jawline. I think you can really. So that's the envy that I get.
Yeah, and I think they're like too. When I see a man with beautiful hair, I want to say, "Man, your hair is beautiful." I never, in my mind, ever say, "That's a handsome man." Like, you know, like it just, those words don't come out of my mouth. But if I see like a great beard, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yo, check out that beard," and immediately I'm like, "Oh, I wonder what that would feel like." And so I do drag, and I understand the contours of the face because you have to be very specific when you line your face to not look feminine. It's the opposite of doing like drag queen makeup. Like, you don't contour in the same way. You don't shade in the same way. And so there again, it's like I've seen beautiful drag kings,
Yeah.
but they're presenting as masculine with these amazing beards and like, I don't know. Sorry,
No, it's good.
It's just, you know, it doesn't make sense to me that we have to like only say beauty is feminine.
You know, if I think about me doing drag, right? If you're like, "Oh, Liz, let's go do drag," I would be in a dress.
You would want to do a drag, like that's
Like,
how.
in
Because
my
you're
mind,
a gay man.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
yeah,
See, but
in
that's
my mind,
interesting.
doing drag would be right. And so my drag name would
Okay.
be Starlinda.
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 Is Starlinda? See, and that right there, like, really is a testament to the fluidity of being butch, because it's less of like a gender, and I think it's more like it's an identity, because and again, it's on a spectrum, because you're a little bit more femme, like a soft butch is what we normally would say.
Chapstick.
Yes, chapstick lesbian, and I'm like, man, I'm bush. Like, I'm just bush, you know? Like, I really am. I don't ever think of myself as like I don't think the last time I wore a dress was probably 23 years ago. 23 years. I would never even imagine myself in a dress. If you see me in a dress, it's probably because I lost a bet to a really good friend who knows I don't want to wear dresses. Like, it would just be the most awkward thing for me. Y'all remember A League of Their Own?
Yes.
Yeah,
When
that was
they
a good
did
film.
all the makeovers and
Yeah.
everybody has this beautiful up close, and then they're like, and there's Marla.
Yeah.
I'm Marla in a dress.
Well, Marla was a dog baseball player, though.
Exactly. But like, they're not doing an up close and personal shot of my
Well.
makeover in a dress, you know?
Marla had a good swing, knocking him out the park, and that swing was beautiful.
Exactly.
Right? That's a good
Exactly.
film, though.
It is. It really is. But it's that perspective that people play with when you talk about presenting a certain way, right? Again, goes back to beauty. This is how we see beauty. These luscious curls, these red lips, and you know, and then it's like, but if you don't do that,
Yeah.
are you less attractive? Are you less beautiful in those eyes, right?
Well, what I find interesting, I mean, you talked about how this language changes, how identity changes. You mentioned when we were younger, we're in the same age bracket, that there was only two options for lesbians, right? It was either butch or feminine. Now, I don't even know how many options there are. Growing up, when I was learning about the LGBTQ community, I think the Q just got added.
Yeah, the T probably wasn't there.
Maybe the T wasn't there as well. It was LGB. You know what I mean? And then now it's like the whole alphabet, right? I mean,
Right.
we're
doing that on purpose now.
You got a plus sign on there for a reason.
doing it just to add it on
At
there.
this point, we're like, oh yeah,
Well,
Look at this, and the rainbow, it's ours.
It's a different time though, right? I mean, people are out, I guess, so to speak, right? And people are, feeling more free to do what they want to do, to be who they want to be and be vocal about it, I would say.
Yeah,
I
think this younger generation has a little bit more freedom. I think people are starting to, and I don't want to say understand more, but they're more aware of gender identity and sexual orientation. Although they conflate the two so much that it really perpetuates discrimination, oppression, violence, right? And that's kind of where we are. Although it appears that folks are more open and out, the struggles, I think, are 10 to 20 times harder than they were
There's
before.
still a lot of violence.
A lot of
violence, and so we can't gloss over that.
No.
Like we can joke about all the language and the choices, right? Because now I'm gonna say, instead of saying butch, now I'm gonna say mask of center.
Mask of center, right?
But there's still a real danger, especially for kids of color,
Right, and our trans community.
Yes.
So, in fact, 2021 was the deadliest year on record for our trans community of color. And it wasn't just trans women, trans men, butch women. They are often, like they experience violence at higher rates. And then, especially for our youth right now in Texas, they are under attack. Our schools are not safe places for our community. But I think it's also a testament to the nature of the conservative landscape that has been just taking over, like from east to west coast.
Yeah.
And even in the deep south, they just did a study and they found that there is a large number of folks in the community who identify in the deep south and in the south more than any other place other than like LA and, bigger metropolitan areas. But even given that fact, it doesn't make it safe for us. Pronouns, just like you said, people are like, why do I have to respect that? Why do I have to do this? Well, it's not about you, right? It's not about you at all.
That's so eloquently said, but we live in a world where people do feel like it's all about me and whoever that me is and whoever is loud. I mean, look at this. I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned you grew up on the rancho.
Yes.
And so I wonder how the political, governmental landscape shapes someone growing up on the rancho, because we're not learning about, Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate and Congress when we're growing up on the rancho. But there are active forces in states that are writing legislation to oppress, to hurt, to take your rights away, as easy as it is with a pen. I mean, they're out there,
Yeah, that conservativeness, though, it goes very deep, especially in our culture, right?
Yes.
If you grow up in certain places and you grow up under certain religious practices, immediately everything is dichotomous. You're a man, you're a woman, you're good, you're bad. It's never anything in between. And I think that's what we do now with the way that we present and the way that we identify is we're breaking those barriers of the dichotomy and saying there's a lot of in between. I mean, I just said it, between us, we both identify as butch, but in very different ways. And so I think that forces people to say, wait a minute, maybe the way that I'm seeing the world really isn't the way the world is, right? But it takes a minute. And I mean, nobody ever really just immediately says, I'm accepting of all of this, or I'm understanding
that's a good
of all
point.
of it, but it's like you have to chip away little by little and continue to challenge the way that people see the world. And how you do that is you just continue to be you and continue to walk in a space with confidence. And even if somebody challenges you, you're able to say, that's all right. That's how you see it. But let me show you something different. And I think that's what I did when I came out. Everybody treated me a little bit different. I mean, I had meetings with people who would just like double take. No matter what. Like, it's the same suit I wore with long curly hair and makeup. But now it's like, oh, like, what are you? Right? And it's like, why?
So
Why
so
does that
on
matter?
that note, you know, we talk about identity, this being an intricate thing, and it is intricate because we talked about all of the options that are out there these days, right? And it's the same whether you're, you know, Guyland was joking earlier about light skin versus dark skin Black folks, you know, in the Latinx, Latin A, you know, community, right? I mean, are you Hispanic? Are you Mexican American, right? I mean, there's some legitimate, you know, questions that I think people could pose. But as y'all walked in here earlier today, you were like, well, what are we going to talk about? I was like, well, what do you want to talk about? And you were like, let's talk about the Gen X butch lesbians. And I'm thinking, now there's a topic. But not only that, I'm thinking like, I wouldn't call you all butch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't just like, to me, that's
What is
like
butch to you?
I don't know, but it's
I'm
offensive.
offended.
It would be, to me, it would be somewhat offensive. Right?
Oh,
Wouldn't it just,
okay.
if I
That's
just
a
said,
good
That's a
point.
good
That's a
point,
really
yeah.
good point. Okay, so one day we were in my office and my colleague was in there, right? A little bit younger. She's younger than me, right? And then my friend comes in who's my age, right? Our generation, we grew up, and she's surrounded by queerness, right? And so she's talking and she refers to me as butch. And I knew that my colleague had never heard this before, right? And out of the corner of my eye, I look at her and she's just like,
She was offended for her.
she was
Because-
so upset. And she's like, nobody can call you butch. Why does she call you butch? And I'm like, si soy apa. You know, I'm like,
Si soy.
because I am butch. And to her, that was just like, and I guess maybe when I was really young, let's say I wasn't out yet, and somebody called me butch,
It would almost be offensive.
it would
Yeah.
be very offensive. But I am so secure in who I am now that I take that back. I take that power back.
But I also think
Yeah.
it's the way that we saw being butch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's that faux pas. Like, yeah, I think I might be this way, but if I look this way, then it's for sure, right?
And I think we talk about, right, we wanted to talk about Gen X butch, right? Because it is such because we are of this age where we were introduced to technology, but it didn't take over our lives, right? Like, I mean, I never made it to Oregon. I don't know if y'all did. Never
Never
made it.
Little green screen. I
Yeah,
never
made it to
yeah.
Oregon, right? But technology was not so pervasive. And right now, things are changing rapidly and language is changing rapidly and it's hard to keep up, right? We were talking about this. So a student will say something. I'll ask a peer mentor, hey, can you do this? And can you do this? And I'll give them a to-do list and they're like, bet.
I'm sorry?
we're playing cards now.
What? And I'm like, right? So now I understand. And now whenever they say bet, I'm like, they got it. They got it.
Yeah,
That's
they
what's up.
understood.
That's what's up. Yeah.
But I think for me, it's a little different because I grew up with a really interesting circle of friends. We had a whole different language. So I know what bet is. Like, bet has been in my vocabulary for a very long time. But
Really?
mid and cap, like, they,
Yeah, the cat
Yeah, no
one.
all
cap.
this stuff, I'm like,
No cap.
Nah, I didn't hear Zero and Trey say that. I didn't hear Method Man and Redman say that, right? You know, it was
Yeah.
just, but I think in our community, there's such an evolution of language. There's such a distinct way that folks are identifying themselves, and it goes beyond orientation. It's more than just identity now. And I think you'll hear folks, and it'll be like 3 or 4 different things, right? I'm pan, I'm this, I'm, you know, and it's like, wow. So even the way that I educate folks, I'm constantly looking up things like, oh, this is a new pronoun that I've never heard before. This is a new identity that I haven't seen yet. And so I think for us, because we only had butch femme and we only had 2 ideas of what a lesbian should look like, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around this. It's not a new concept, but a fluidity, right? So like, I'm not, like, people will say, well, I'm not butch, but I'm not femme, right? So they're gender queer. And now we're embracing the term again, queer. Like we've
Yeah.
been embracing
Yeah,
it since the 80s, but I think now it's a little bit more inclusive and people will identify as queer now. And
Yeah.
it's not a faux pas.
I describe myself as queer.
Yeah, I like queer.
Yeah.
I like, it's funny because, first of all, if you're watching this, folks, let us know what you think about the term butch. Do you use the word? Do you identify other people as butch? Do you do that for them or do they tell you? These are interesting questions.
And where are the butch
Where are they?
lesbians in San Antonio? We would like to hang out. Can you please tell us where your
Meet us at the
taco
coffee
spot
shop or
is?
the taco-
Right?
Yeah,
Where?
'cause-
Yes.
There's an after party at VodPod tonight. They're all lined up outside.
¿Dónde están?
Yeah, where are you, on the strip or off the strip? Because I feel like we're not there.
We're
anymore.
I don't think we're on the strip.
No.
No.
I don't even know if we're in cargo shorts anymore.
Jeez.
But butch femme, I was
know.
just thinking it can be applied like even outside of the queer community. So people will refer to themselves as butch or femme outside of it. And I say that because I have cisgender, straight, heterosexual friends who, like, when they change a tire, immediately they're like, yo, I was butch today, I changed a tire. Or
Wow.
they put an IKEA shelf together, or they're like, hey, I used a power
Used to
tool.
drill.
I felt very butch today, so I think
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
yeah. And then it's not always a positive thing, but we do refer to some folks who identify as male as femme, and it's not always positive, but it's not always negative either. So I think depending on how you're using it, it could be offensive.
Yeah.
Or it couldn't be. And so I think if you hear somebody who immediately identifies as butch, it's okay to refer to them as butch. My friends do it all the time at work, but they call me boosh because that's kind of how I say it as a joke. But I think just depending on how you allow people to space, that's how you should use the term. Like get the opportunity first to understand what that means to that person. And then, be able to utilize that, because I would have never called you butch.
Yeah, I
I'm
wouldn't
just
have
gonna
said.
tell you right now.
I don't know. When I think of butch, I honestly think of a dude with a shaved head that's like, a big football player, lineman type dude. Like his name is Butch. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's what I think of.
From Iowa, plays
Yeah.
football.
Yeah, just a big, round guy, shaved head, and his name is Butch. That's what I think of.
Wow.
And I don't know why I don't equate that to anything in this community. Now, perhaps because it's not one of the letters, right? I mean,
No.
The
right?
B
Yeah.
does not stand
No,
for butch.
it's L for lesbian, and we don't take lesbian and break it down
That's what I'm
to
saying.
identity. Yeah, it's either you're a lesbian or you're a trans person, and they're not the same.
And I don't like using lesbian.
No,
No, I like queer.
queer.
I like queer.
So let me ask you this. You talked about the word lesbian isn't broken down.
Right.
I mean, how can it be broken down?
I think there's variations of that. Lesbian, you could identify under a spectrum from
Yeah.
extremely butch, right? But not a trans person, not wanting to transition from female to male. It's an expression, it's an identity, and less of having the feeling that you are in the wrong body. It's embodying certain aspects of culture and people. Like there's a socio-historical context to butch that is really important that we need to really consider. Because butch, again, Leslie Feinberg, Stone Butch Blues was the name of the book. It was a white middle class male masculine presenting woman with a buzz haircut. But when you look at like the black and brown community, butchness looks very different. And so when you think of the term lesbian, anything under that category, you could be hyper feminine where your identity as a lesbian is invisible. The assumption is, oh, they're hyper feminine, they wear dresses, they get their nails done, they wear makeup. They couldn't possibly be a woman who loves another woman.
They can't
right?
possibly be gay. Yeah.
But then you have people kind of in between where perhaps like Liz, masculine of center, right? So you're kind of in that middle point where you still have these aspects of like femininity, but it's not hyper femininity. Like I can't imagine you having a full face of makeup. Like, now I'm like, it's hard for me to imagine, but I could possibly see you in a dress and drag. Like
That's
I could see
drag.
that. And so there's that that embracing of both sides of the spectrum. Like, I will present this way, but I still feel this way. So I won't maybe possibly cut all my hair off, right? And then you have people who are kind of like me, who are not like super hyper masculine. Like, I'm not wearing a binder every day. Like, I'm not trying to modify my body in certain ways, but I feel more comfortable with short hair, presenting and dressing this way. I love to be in a suit, but I want to be in a full suit with a tie. Like, don't just give me a blazer, right?
Yeah.
And so what we don't do when we collect data from people is understand that spectrum of what it means to be a lesbian and how you identify and where you fall on the continuum. Because I'm probably never going to put makeup on unless I'm going in drag, you know, but it's not even like lipstick and mascara, you know, like I'm contouring my face so I look like I have a chin or a beard.
Yeah.
And so I think we forget that folks who fall under that category of lesbian could be anything in between there. So, and again, it's cultural, right? And I think we talked about that too. What we embody as masculinity and how we see it for us, it equates to machismoism and what that means. Like, what is a man, right? What did we see?
Because there's some things that we shouldn't be recreating,
Not
right?
at all, but we do. We continue to perpetuate these cycles. And like Anzaldúa wrote about it a lot. Shireen Moraga wrote about it a lot. It's just this hyper masculinity that comes with our culture.
So, but on that note, like Liz, you mentioned earlier that when you were growing up, you wanted to be like your dad. Now, I truly feel like our generation, which is Gen X, you know, we're different. At least the ones that are here, the ones that we have in these spaces, the ones that are making, you know, conditions better for the next generation, right? You talked about, you know, using the pronouns. You talked about, you know, being open and doing what you want to do and lifting weights and dressing the way you want to dress, being proud. You know, I get the feeling that when you looked at your dad when you were younger, you wanted to embody all the good things. Is that accurate?
Yes. My dad was so stoic,
Yeah,
so strong, right? So strong. And yes, I wanted to embody all of that, right? Like, and I inherited his walk. That I just inherited from the very beginning, right? His looks, my dirty looks are come. Like, people sometimes are like, "Why are you mad?" That's just my face. It's just my face. Like, I can't help it. So yeah, I wanted to embody that, but also, right, with the generation that of my parents, right, with that generation, also didn't come the privilege of healing. They didn't have that privilege, right? And so sometimes it was hard. It was hard to grow up with a man that was that quiet, right? That never said anything. And so I had this, like, when I came out, right, I had this like really toxic masculinity, right? Where like I tried to bottle everything in, and the only time that it was appropriate for me to cry, was when I was drunk and I was listening to Chente.
Wow.
Right? And then I could cry, right? And I could say whatever I wanted to say, and then the next morning, right, you get up hungover and you just move on like nothing happened. The idea of going to counseling was ridiculous, right? I would just rather, I'll self-medicate, right? I'll self-medicate, and I mean, really and truly, it's a blessing that I'm here. It's a blessing that I'm here.
Wow.
Because I was just going to let that toxic masculinity kill me.
Jeez.
At one point, I really was.
So let me ask you this. This also begs the question, because I think that, you know, our generation now, for better or for worse, you know, and we kind of were, but we're more now. We're like those mentors now for like the 20-somethings, the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, right, that are, you know, in the community colleges. Those are in the community that are trying to figure it out, right? What did the generation above us, how were the lesbian, you know, women of color in that generation, our tias, you know, those that were in the neighborhood? I mean, how did they navigate this? Because they had even less of the freedom, right? Because when you pull in the cultural piece, I mean, you talk about something that's really faux pas, right? I mean, it was like, it's taboo almost. But then if it was the butch community, right, it was more pronounced, I guess you would say, right?
I would have to say that it was rough and maybe even isolating. I remember one butch lesbian growing up. Like when I say I come to the rancho, like I ain't lying. I ain't lying. Like
I was going to say the exact opposite.
From a super rural community, right? Like I graduated with 16 people.
Holy jeez.
16, right? Like, yeah, like it was, and I remember being little and seeing this really butch woman, and it had short hair, had the keys, everything. and I remember looking at her and thinking, is that who I am?
Wow.
Or I think maybe more importantly, not who I am, is that what I am. What I am.
Oh, wow.
That, which is important, right? To note, is that what I am? Because I had already been told that what I liked and what I wanted to do was inappropriate, right? Yep. And so the fear that that's what I was. Because nobody ever said anything like outright mean about her in front of me, but there was a tone.
Yes.
There was an understanding.
Yeah.
And probably many phrases and terms to refer to that person, but it probably was never lesbian. Marimacha, mariposa, right? Yeah. So there's these terms that we hear and we're like, could that be what I am? And then there's that fear because again, that permanent outness, there's always going to be the perception of what you are, not who you are, but what you are. So I had the exact opposite because growing up, I had, those tias that aren't really related to you, but they're your tia.
They're like mentors.
So I had my Aunt Alice, and she had a sister named Molly. Molly was butch. Like, I mean, it was amazing. And I always adored her. Like, there was something, I don't know, maybe that's why anyway, that's a whole other, but for me, it was always, this is who they are, right? We didn't talk about their identity or sexuality. It was just Molly who presented a little bit more masculine. But for my family, it was like, that's them. But in our space, there's no one like that here. So when I came out, it was hard because my mom was very accepting and open of everybody else. But when it came to our family, she was like, I don't think I want you to have this life. And
now, why is that though? Like, what for that particular person, your mom, right? We're not talking about everyone, right? Because we can't. But like, why is that?
And she adored
Because you seem like a good person, though. You know what I mean? Like, if you were my daughter, I would think, man, I got a badass daughter. You know what I'm saying?
I think for her, and here's, again, this is my mom, the accidental activist. For her, she would tell me things like, your life is going to be hard.
Okay, so that was a fear thing. The things
that you're going to confront are going to make things difficult. So when we talked about marriage, no, you can't do that in Texas. But you could do it in other states at the time. Or even having children. Why would you want to put your children through living a life like this? And I think for her, it was those things, the barriers, the hurdles, the institutional things that were going to occur to me, or the societal pressures to be something else. But it was never like that, I don't love you because you identify this way, or I'm going to write you out of my life because you like women. Like, it was just the fear of what's going to happen to this person because the world doesn't understand them. And that's, I think about it, I'm like, that's really interesting because it was never about who I was or how I presented or how I identified. It was how other people were either going to reject me or accept me. Yeah. That I think for her was the heavy part of it. But she always accepted folks. Like I don't know, my mom had a friend named Curtis, who the first person I ever met who had AIDS, and he was a drag queen. And she used to take me when I was in high school to watch him perform at this bar. Like, you're like, what? Yeah. And Molly was in our life constantly when I was a kid. So it wasn't like she hid me from things, but I think it was her saying, look at how they live. Like, this isn't an easy life. So just be careful.
And, a lot of parents or a lot of kids in this situation could have it worse, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I had I'm telling you, like, my mom didn't talk to me for 3 months. So I was outed. I was at the Bonham, and I ran in San Antonio. And I ran into my sister's friend who grabbed me by the hand and was like, what are you doing here? And I'm
Older.
like, what are you doing here? Right? Yeah, older. And then my sister calls me because, it's 3 a.m. and that's what you do when you want to talk to your sister. And she's like, hey, blah, 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 called me. Are you okay? And I'm like, I saw them in a gay bar, and I'm cracking up. So then it was just like chain reaction. My mom called my dad, and my mom was distraught. My dad calls me, and he's like, Mija, your mom told me what you're doing. Are you still coming to watch boxing?
What were you doing?
I was like, what am I doing? But that was it. He's like, I don't want to see it. And my dad was very machismo. He grew up on the west side, like fedoras or tapitas, Stacey Adams, creased pants. So there was no room for me to be lesbian and present as butch. One day I came to his house in jeans, a flannel, and some Docs. He was like, no, you look too much like a man. And I start, like in my mom, I'm like, what?
See,
the 90s. Yeah, everybody's doing this. But I didn't come out till I was 19. Like, yeah. I mean, I knew. When I was 6, I knew. I had a crush on the girl at the food court thing at the skating rink.
My first crush, I think I was in kinder and she was older. She was in first grade.
Oh, it was like first grade or second?
She was in first.
Older woman.
And we used to sit together on the bus.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, 6th grade. I was at the skating rink. I mean, 6 years old. I was at the skating rink.
I was 19 as well when I came out. I mean, but I always knew, right? Like, but it was just like, oh, she's really good at sports.
Right. She's very athletic.
So when my mom was surprised, I was like, why are you surprised?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, but I think that people just thought, oh, well, she's really dedicated to sports, right, in her school, and she's going to go to college.
You're going to grow out of it. Oh, they'll grow out of it. Yeah. They're going to grow out of it. They just need to find the right person.
Right.
Wow.
And you're like,
So super embarrassing, right? So the first time that I registered for college, that first time, this was still when you registered in person?
In person, yeah.
Remember you had to wait in line? And I'm waiting, and my mom comes with me because I don't have enough financial aid. So for this first semester, right? For my first year before I came out, my parents supported me. Okay. All right, so my mom was waiting there, right, and I'm waiting in line, and this guy right behind me starts talking to me, right, and I'm like, all right, I'm thinking it's just pleasantries, right, okay, and he says he's gonna be like a highway patrol and all this. Unbeknownst to me, my mom falls in love with this man for me.
Oh, for you.
She had it all planned out.
Right. So what, like a year later, when I come out, no, she doesn't bring him up.
Are you serious?
Pues, ¿qué pasó con did she?
Did you ever even talk to the guy again?
No.
That's hilarious.
And I'm like,
He made
what?
such an impression on her.
Like, she was like, just like grasping it. Like, yeah. But that's what she brought up. And I was like, what?
Do you remember the first friend you brought home? Did you bring a friend home?
I did.
It's always a friend or a roommate. Always.
Yeah.
Makes it safe.
Yeah, I do remember the first friend that I brought home, and my mom loved her.
Right?
Did your mom knew? Your mom, at this point, your mom knew?
No,
they're friends.
Okay.
No, they're friends. But once it turns out that they're, oh my gosh, she was so upset when she found out. I was like, but you liked her before?
And they find everything wrong with them. Right?
¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? Like you.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because when you're, I'm going to just say closeted, right? At home, you can bring all kinds of friends over. And there's no reason for y'all not to share a bed. And like, I mean, they just make it so easy. But then the minute you're out, it's like, psh, y'all better not sleep in the same room together. And like, it just becomes this thing. But it's so easy, right? When you're closeted to just almost be free, but then tiptoe around things. But it's always a friend. You can't say this is my girlfriend, or even if you do, they misunderstand the term. They really mean like, this is my friend who's a girl, and we're really saying, nah, this is my girlfriend.
And now I don't introduce my parents officially to anybody.
No,
like they can meet whoever I'm dating, but it's not you're gonna meet my parents or you're gonna meet. We don't have that kind of relationship, and so it's like they meet. Like I don't change my life.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm coming or going and I'm going to bring my girlfriend, then I bring my person, right? Yeah. But I don't make it a thing anymore to
You just get to that point in your life, I think, to go back to what you're saying, like, you just get comfortable with who you are. And like, if you think about all of like the white centric coming out processes, we went from identity comparison, right? Like, is that what I am, to identity synthesis. Like, this is who I am and what I am, like who and what. It's not just the what anymore. And so you go through that progression. And I think after a while, it's just comfortable that way. Like, there's no excuse, there's no question, there's no explanation. And I think you do it beautifully when you're like, I identify as a gay man, period.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if people are confused or they don't understand, because
Well,
again,
people
it's
aren't
not for
people
you,
aren't
right?
stupid though. You know what I mean? Like, people can put it together if they really wanted to. It's people don't want to.
They don't want
They
to.
don't-
Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't want to
want
open their minds. They want to refuse, like, no, like, just no. And then you think like, well, maybe, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, like, this, first of all, I want to thank y'all for coming out here and talking about all this. Y'all didn't have to, right? We just opened up the can of worms. And now that we got everything figured out, right? Now that we've solved it all. No, I'm kidding. But we've got a crash course here for everyone that's listening, right? And if people want to listen, this is here for you. This could be a resource. This could open up, more, cans of worms, right? You all are resources for people. You're performing. Do you still perform as a comedian, poet? I mean, are you performing
Yes, I still perform
actively?
poetry, mostly poetry. But yeah, I've been itching to get back to comedy.
Yeah.
We should do like a drag comedy, call it the Deep South.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
The
it's definitely
deep soul.
doable.
Deep.
Right,
Just
produced
the
by
tip.
VodPod Media. We're gonna talk about it. But let me ask you this, because we have a lot of people that watch the show from all different walks of life. And again, I don't even like the term walks of life really, but it's a term, right? It's a colloquial expression. For folks that are watching this, anyone. There's people watching this that are conservative, people that, probably agree or disagree with this, anything they might have heard. I mean, what do you tell these people right now? I mean, if you have any parting words, any words of wisdom. I mean, one of the messages that I share and I want to share, and I think that it's becoming better now, is for parents. I have 2 young kids. I have a 9 and a 4-year-old. Many of my contemporaries, a lot of people that I break bread with, they have children as well. We're going to a little kid's birthday party this weekend. And I hope that their parents will just love them unconditionally. That's my hope.
Right.
Because, I'm thinking about, a lot of times you're telling me this stuff. I'm thinking about my daughter, you know what I mean? And I want her to have a good life, right? Too, you had me thinking about what your mom was telling you. You want to protect her. You want the best for her, whatever that may be. I mean, I think that's ultimately up to her, but we're transitioning, right? We're in a different space than we were when we were growing up. I don't know. I mean, what do we tell people? I mean, and again, the conversation looks like a lot of different things. Like Gylan mentioned it earlier, like, we don't have to educate people, right?
Right.
But maybe we kind of do sometimes, right? Like,
I think it's
depending
bringing
on
awareness to it. And
Yeah.
you said it exactly. Like, what price do you want to put on love? And how, like, if you're saying you love folks unconditionally, but then you put a condition on it, like, but only if you don't do this, then I think it takes a lot of that reflection, that intrinsic stuff that'll happen. Like, what is wrong in my mind that I feel like I need to do these things, especially to your children? That's one thing I just can't wrap my head around, because again, I feel very privileged to have been able to come out the way that I did and have folks around me that were accepting. I had a champion, right? My sister was my champion. And I think that what folks don't understand is that it only takes one person to either make you not want to be authentic versus be authentic, right? And you have to be able to do that, do the internal work. You can't just continue to perpetuate these cycles, especially not with the people closest to you. And I think that's what we forget, is the pain that we cause people when we don't allow them to feel free. And it doesn't take much. It's pausing, it's listening, and it's going out and seeking opportunities to engage in those crucial conversations that will then show and model the behavior that you want your children to model. Because had my mom not been so accepting of folks growing up, I might have had a whole different coming out process or situation. But because she was so open, it made it a little bit easier for me. But other folks don't have that privilege. We just close our mind to those things. Like, this can't possibly be in my family or with people that I know. And so we immediately negate the fact that perhaps we've known all along, or, you know, maybe there's some work that we haven't done and we just have to do it. I think that's a testament too to like the time that we're living in, because maybe 20 years ago I probably wouldn't have had that same mindset. It would have just been like, well, you either lose your family or you gain friends, right? And you create a whole new space. But we shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, that's tough.
We shouldn't, yeah. Because it's so isolating. Like, oftentimes you feel alone because you don't know anybody who you can talk to or connect with, or, you know, say, hey, this is how I identify. Hey, me too. You know, you don't. And then when you do, it just, I don't know, it's this sense of freedom, and like, it's no longer a stillness, right? You begin to kind of feel the waves on the journey, and it makes it different. I don't know.
I think my advice to people, right, if you're listening and maybe you're younger, right, I think my advice is accept love. Accept it, right? Like, I was so upset that I didn't get love from here that I would shun this one, right? And the happiest that I've been in my life, right, is the work that I did to make that little girl happy. If you're older, right, and you can think of, be the person that the child version of you really needed and really wanted to be, right? And I remember being little, and I'm always going to tell this story because I think, God, I was so gay. I was little. I was like 5, 6, and I had a pink polo shirt. Man, because I felt very bad.
Yeah.
I felt, and it made me look like I had muscles. Like the cut on this polo shirt. And it was my favoriteest shirt. And I could never tell anyone why I loved it. Could never tell anyone why I loved it, right? And so I think of that little girl all the time. All the time. So I don't, when I need to work out, I do it because look, she wanted muscles.
Put on a polo.
Yeah, I do. I do. They make fun of me at the office all the time. Yeah. Because of my...
Y'all definitely rock the outfits well, though. I mean, you know, when you came in, I was like, where'd you get that jacket from?
Right.
And then Guyman was like, your boots?
Suited and booted. Liz is always suited and booted.
All the time.
Yeah.
And you know, my long hair, I don't think of my long hair as like a female femininity thing. I think of it as more of an indigenous kind of, you know. I think of my long hair like in that context.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
But again, that socio-historical thing, right? Like, our mestiza brains might see that differently, because like, my uncles growing up always had long hair. Always had long hair, and like beautiful hair, you know, but also big thick beards, and you know, but yeah, so I think that's our mindset, right? That cultural thing.
Yeah. Well, y'all are living, breathing testaments to living radically and authentically and in walking in your truth. So I give you all the credit, all the flowers for doing it and modeling the way, because it's a beautiful thing, right? If we can call it beautiful, right? Because there's beauty in this sort of stuff. And it's, you know, I also, you know, for me, you know, I guess I also have to use my privilege as well to, you know, perhaps shine a light on this sort of stuff, because I know nothing about this other than what you all have told me. And but again, I can learn, right? So I should do that, right? And how I can be supportive and learn and you know, do all of these things. I want to do that humbly, you know. I think that's important, but it's just, you know, good stuff. But I see y'all as just chill, cool people. You know what I mean? Like, you know, for who y'all are. Like, you talked about like being in a suit. Like, I think like anybody would look good in a suit.
Right.
Just a nice tailored, nice suit.
Yeah.
And why can't people, like everyone, wear a suit? I think they can. I think they should.
My point. Like, if you see somebody long hair, you could, feminine in a suit, that is sexy as all get out. Like,
that is.
Yeah.
That
with
is.
like just the right shoe. Like, I can respect that. But then I can also see the flip side, like a Ruby Rose in the suit with some nice boots or some Oxfords. And that still, to me, is like sexy.
Yeah.
So if you're out there in some heels and a suit, give me a call.
Yeah, meet Liz at the after party.
555.
555.
There you go. They're going to start calling right away. All the viewers and people watching on the
Lines are
rebroadcast.
lighting up right now.
Hey, but it's been a good night, folks. Great show. We are going to let them get the closing words. We'll let y'all close it out. Give us 30 to 60 seconds closing words for all your fans, all your viewers, all your peoples, anything you may want to do. If you want to promote any recurrent works, I mean, whatever it is, any shout outs, any parting words, feel free to let it rip.
I got probably my most popular play, I Know, is available on Amazon. Let me just tell you that it is a fairy tale. The concept is that little gay boys and girls get a fairy drag mother instead of a fairy godmother. So nice. It's a fairy tale. It's a modern gay fairy tale. So check it out. Check it out on Amazon. Purchase it right now. Don't call 555. Purchase Amazon right now. I Know. Look up Liz right now.
I also feel like what we need to do is make sure you get your voice out there and go vote. Protect our community, protect our trans youth, and especially the folks here in San Antonio. I just feel like we need to have more support for organizations, communities, student-led things that are happening across, our city. I think we need to call some more attention to that because the youth have a voice and they're very powerful, and we just need to make sure that they have a platform for that. So absolutely give power to voice, especially if you are Latinx, Chicanx, or Hispanic. We really need to continue the movement. But also this Saturday, let's be honest, there is a drag king performance of the S.A. Poppies. So if you all have an opportunity, check it out. It's on the Strip. All right, folks, there it is. What was it again? S.A. Poppy? S.A. Poppies, yeah. So it's a drag king troupe here in San Antonio, and they've been gaining a lot of traction. So shout out to those folks. Shout out to Pinche Villa. They were featured in a magazine, and they just came back from New Mexico, and they did a drag performance. So it's up-and-coming performers, and it's a pretty big following. So let's be honest, on Saturday. There it is, folks. Spoken like true kings, queens. I mean, what do you even say? I don't know. Royalty. I'm a king. Royalty. Yeah, there you go. And so that's the other thing with that, right? Like, let's get to know our people, right? Let's get to know preferences. Let's get to know how they want to be identified and all that stuff. I think that's where we can start. Right. We can start somewhere. If you started from scratch, start by getting to know your people. And it's been a blessing, folks. I got to say that we're coming up on 100 episodes here of the Maximo Show at VodPod Media here in just a few weeks. And I see a lot of people, and y'all are amongst the most beautiful, I will say. So thank y'all so much for coming on the show tonight, for rocking it, for sharing your words of wisdom. Folks, check them out. Follow them. Get with them on social media. Hire them. Buy the books. Tip them at the drag shows. And we'll see you next time next week, folks. It's been a blessing. Thank you so much. Peace.